Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Dr. Kam Ghaffarian. Dr. Ghaffarian is a visionary entrepreneur dedicated to creating companies with a mission to advance humanity and expand human knowledge. He co-founded and serves as executive chairman of several deep tech companies that push the limits of humankind's capability. Among his ventures are X Energy, an advanced nuclear energy reactor and fuel company; Intuitive Machines, a premier provider of technologies and space exploration services that became the first company to land on the moon; Axiom Space, building the first commercial space station while being the sole provider of private astronaut missions to the International Space Station; and Quantum Space, focused on building versatile, long-duration spacecraft. He's also the founder and CEO of IBX, an innovation and investment firm that oversees a portfolio of companies he helped create. Dr. Ghaffarian is an active philanthropist focusing on education, STEM initiatives, and the pursuit of interstellar travel. Dr. Ghaffarian, welcome to the Future Space.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are a very busy person, so I'm extremely honored to have you on this chat. This is going to be great.
Thank you. I look forward to this. And I'm sorry that I didn't join the last cruise, but I'm glad we're having this conversation and look forward to it.
You were surely missed. I know that Bettina was looking for you on the ship. She looked like something was missing. Dr. Ghaffarian, let's start with, what would be 3 words that for you capture the essence of space?
Okay, one I think is space unifies humanity. The other one is infinite possibilities. And a third one is consciousness expansion. These are the 3 things. And that's why I'm so deeply interested in space exploration.
And in general, do you think that that's the purpose of New Frontiers? Anything that is ahead of us helps us expand our sense of awareness and also offer a common goal for people to rally behind. Now, I mean, we're talking about space. Back in the 1500s, it might have been or was the new world that ocean exploration was looking for. Now it's space, but these new frontiers purpose usually offers these opportunities.
I think, of course, the ones that you mentioned were there and they were huge, but space is a completely different order of magnitude, right? Next week we'll have our 4th mission to International Space Station, and we're taking an astronaut from India, one from Hungary, one from Poland, plus our commander, Peggy Whitson. So this is the 4th mission, but all people who have gone to space, whether on low Earth orbit or beyond, when they come back with this profound effect they call overview effect, where they're going around Earth, every 90 minutes and see sunrise and sunset, and they see this beautiful blue globe protected with this thin layer of atmosphere, and they don't see borders or religions or anything else, and all life exists within this planet of ours. But at the same time, when we go further, just if we leave our solar system behind and we're in our galaxy, go past Moon, Mars, and we're in our galaxy, the distance from one point of our galaxy to another is 100,000 light years. So if you go with the speed of light, it approximately take 100,000 years to go from one point of our galaxy to another. And then there are approximately 400 billion stars in our galaxy alone, similar to our own sun, with planets around them. So you see the vastness of our galaxy alone, and just that sort of mind-numbing how vast is our galaxy alone. And then you say, well, let's now leave our galaxy behind, and there are 2 trillion other galaxies in the universe, and some of them like 1 billion times or 1 million times larger than our own. So when you sort of look at that, it's like we're just this tiny little dust in the universe. And I think it was Carl Sagan that says, like, in order to really comprehend it, think about all the grains of sands in all the oceans, in all the desert, everywhere. And we're just one grain of sand. And so when you sort of think like that, it provides a different perspective, right? I give talks all around the world, and one of the examples I like to do with the audience in the room is that assume we're in this spaceship and there are people from Africa and from Middle East and from United States, from all over the world, and female and male and children. And we're all in this spaceship, and say we lift off from Earth and we go past the space station and the moon, and let's say we are in our galaxy, and let's assume that, we're able to meet with other intelligent beings somewhere in our galaxy, and they will ask us, like, where are you from? If I said sort of I'm from Washington, D.C. or New York or from Beijing or from Paris is meaningless. The only way I can sort of describe in terms of where we're from is to say, look, I'm from this part of the galaxy, and our star is called the sun, and I live third planet from our star called the Earth, and we are human beings and we are humankind. You see, when you do that, it's sort of like all the separation disappears, and we realize that in the interstellar picture, we really all are one. And that's what I mean by unifying humanity, because with all the wars that exist and all the separations and hunger and everything else, I don't think our consciousness have grown yet to realize we really are all one race, human race. And that's why I said it unifies humanity from that perspective. But it also expands our consciousness, right? Our consciousness grows to the level to say, if we are such a small little dot in this large ocean of grains of sands in the universe, we need to take care of each other. Almost like a Star Trek utopian structure of get rid of the hunger and get rid of all the separation. In fact, I believe that the much bigger pandemic than COVID-19 that it sort of haunts us is the pandemic of separation, that we don't realize we really are one. And so that's why I said unifying humanity, and also infinite possibilities, because just think about all the places that we can go and all the things we can learn in the universe if we are interstellar, and then consciousness expansion.
Let's go down a little bit the rabbit hole of philosophy, the life in the universe. If nature driving force on the planet for all these billions of years that it's been on the planet is to connect, the complexity, the evolution, always with the purpose of basically moving forward. And the scale of the universe is there because there's just some randomness of what works, what doesn't work. If life wants to connect on the planet, then it wants to connect on the universal scale. And now there's the first species that we know of that has the capacity now to take that life that's been just growing on this tiny speck and take it beyond. Do we see humanity with a duty to move that life forward? Because there's a universe begging to be disrupted. This sense of nothingness out there, while people might have a romantic idea that there's nothing out there, but for a perspective of life, this is just waiting to be developed in terms of life.
100%. I think another quote from Carl Sagan, he said it would be a statistical improbability that there's not other lives in the universe. And I'm a very strong believer that as vast as the universe is, as I explained it earlier, how can it not hold life or intelligent life for that matter? In fact, if I remember correctly, I think there were some scientists that extrapolated that as vast as the universe is, there are probably 1 trillion planets that probably potentially could hold life or intelligent life in the universe. And that's just tiny speck again compared to the size of the universe. And I also believe that our ultimate destiny is to become interstellar and multiplanetary and interstellar, and that's what I believe. And for many reasons, not only take human journey beyond our planet to other planets and to other stars, but to learn, to expand our consciousness. Just think about the last 3 weeks. I visited with the president in Saudi Arabia, then I went to UAE and France, then I spent a week in Switzerland, and then a few days in London. I came back. And just meeting other cultures, other people, how much we expand as a result of that. Now, take that to the, if you say, interstellar or universal. So my belief, Daniel, is that we are actually universal beings. except we don't recognize it. I believe that we are universal being, and we are, you mentioned connected. We are connected. We are connected to each other. We are connected to the planet and everything that's on it. We are connected to the galaxy, and we're connected to the universe. And if we are able to sort of comprehend that, then our consciousness expanded in a different way. So, and we are made of the same material as the universe. I don't know if you ever looked at this. If you just Google comparison of human brain with a picture of the universe, have you ever done that? You see a very interesting similarity as to how the universe looks like compared to how our brain cells are formed, which is quite remarkable. So I see that connectedness that exists, and therefore part of our human journey, human destiny, to go beyond our planet and go to other stars and other places.
I do say that the nature of the universe is nothing different than the nature on Earth. It would not do something different on this planet that is part of the universe, right? So these patterns that we see at the micro level will be the same pattern that we can see on the universal scale. If we continue these similarities between the micro scale and the universal scale, on the planet, for billions of years, life was kind of cruising around the single cell organism. But once that leap to multi-cells, it was a tremendous leap. But once that leap was done, you had an explosion on the evolution scale. You had the Cambrian, and you had here we are today. We can make a parallel between the single planet and multi-planet. The single planet is cruising along because it's one environment, and that leap to go multi-planetary is humongous. It's a huge leap. But once that leap will be created, it creates an entire new field of opportunities. And I guess that's what excites you on all your projects and companies.
It does. And let me just maybe give you a little bit of blueprint. So if you sort of start by saying the ultimate destiny is to become interstellar, and then say, well, how do we get there? First step is to be able to live and work 250 miles above Earth, which is where the current ISS resides. And my belief is ultimately to maybe have a space city that people live and work, and there is space manufacturing capabilities, and we take advantage of the microgravity environment to be able to do things that we cannot do on Earth that benefits every human everywhere. Step one. And then, maybe the next step is the moon, to be able to explore, go there, create a habitat, live, work as an intermediate step to go to Mars, and then maybe build the superhighways that connects our planet to the moon, to Mars and beyond. And then ultimately figure out a way how we can go to our closest star, to our star, which is Proxima Centauri, which is 4.25 light years. Now, if I just gave you that blueprint, now look at the companies that I have. Axiom Space is to build that space city above Earth. Intuitive Machine is really the moon activities, the moon landers and the cislunar communication and data systems and all of those things, the cislunar economy, and then beyond that, Mars. Quantum space is really just to build these superhighways that connect our planet to others and sort of creating that GPS. I call it the quantum net, to connect all these dots. And then I have this nonprofit organization. It's called Limitless Space Institute. And the idea behind it is to inspire and educate and do research and development to become interstellar. And in fact, our target audience are not scientists and engineers, are not university students or high school students. It's 8-year-olds. We want to inspire them to think beyond our solar system. How do we create new engineering, new science, new math to become interstellar? And the way we do it is by actually teach the teachers. When we teach the teachers, then the teachers can teach the students. And now we have actually programs in Nigeria, Brazil, other places in the world to sort of create this. So I truly believe in this journey and this destiny for humanity.
I'm curious. It was not you at 20 years old writing down a business plan and thinking we need to build highways for space. How this gets to be manifested, or how did you start putting these pieces together? Was that more of a started with a simple idea and then that idea morphed into something more grand, or from the very beginning when you were young, you had this dream and this vision?
Daniel, one of the words that I really like is inspiration. And word inspire means to be in spirit. In spirit means to be out of your mind. You're connected to your soul, to your spirit, right? That's where that comes. And so when you inspire someone, you create an energy field that is really not quantifiable. It's this incredible. So I was, early childhood, when I was 6 years old, I would look at the stars and just be mesmerized by them and asking this curiosity question is like, how far are they? Is it possible that people are living in them? How can we go there? And like many others who today I call space cadets, when I saw Neil Armstrong landing on the surface of the moon when I was 11 years old, it triggered that, wow, this is actually possible. And that sort of got me in this journey of space explorations and all of that. But to be honest, I'm a very spiritual person and also philosophical person. I think there were a lot of dots that I had that connected as a result of my subconscious thinking of this. And so truly it was not this planned approach where I have this blueprint. So I started my first company, SGT, because I just loved space in providing services in terms of engineering and science and information technology to NASA and other government agencies. And we became like the second largest engineering services provider to NASA as a whole. And, part of my story is, I had someone walked in my office and asked me if I could sponsor 4 orphans in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, in 2007. And I said yes. That happened, and the 4 ended up to becoming 8 and 10 and 20 and 40 and 80. And we built a school, and today I have close to 1,400 kids that I support in Kinshasa, which is the capital of Congo. And we feed the children every single day. And it's one of the projects I'm incredibly proud of that touches my heart. But as a result of that, and the school didn't have power. And it sort of occurred to me that when you don't have power, you don't have education, you don't have clean water, and the standard of living is not good. And even though my whole journey has been about space, I said, well, we got to do something where we can provide power economic way everywhere in the world. And that really triggered me to create X Energy in 2009, who's now a world leader in advanced nuclear. And we've come up with the technologies that, is reactors that are 100% safe. No way, shape, or form can melt down, much smaller footprint, generational for reactors. In fact, we have this massive contract to provide power to Amazon AI data centers and all that. So that's got me in that journey. It was sort of really not planned, but I feel like the universal forces, if you will, pushed me toward that. And then in 2013, I met with Steve Altemus, who was the former head of engineering at Johnson Space Center and deputy center director. And then through some incredible synchronicity, by the way, that's one of my favorite words. Synchronicity is like right things happening at the right time. And he and I co-founded, along with Tim Crane, Intuitive Machines. And then 2016, it was me and another amazing person, Michael Safardini, who was the previous program manager for International Space Station. We got connected and we started Axiom Space, and in 2021, Quantum Space. So this is how the event happened, and other companies, and of course, Limitless Space Institute and others that happened. But I gave you the blueprint, but it was not like something like I planned and connected the dots. But now when I think about it, and this is another part of, I think, the universal energy, I would say, I see how they are all organized in a way that subconsciously maybe I intended, and it just was created. If it makes sense. I mean, this is more of philosophy and spirituality and manifestation, if you will, rather than a planned approach.
Well, philosophy and spirituality is my wheelhouse. I get into these long conversations, so no worries there. I've really appreciated what Axiom and Intuitive Machine on the space side have brought in the story, because these two companies have been pioneers in bringing in actors that are not necessarily space related. Right? Axiom has brought in Prada, Intuitive Machine. You had Columbia Sportwear that was involved, because the idea is always to expand those conversations and go beyond the siloed. And that's often the problem with these communities, whether it's environmental or space, right? They tend to stay in their own little worlds and they don't bridge. So you start having this divide as opposed to having everyone working together. Because ultimately, we're talking about the human experience and everybody's involved into that human experience. Cam, I want to ask you a little bit more about energy. Back in when I was younger in my 20s, I actually considered going into lobbying for nuclear energy. I thought that nuclear energy was the solution for the future. I think one of the biggest disservice that we've done in the 70s was actually to go against nuclear. Had we continue, I think that the world would be different. And I think that energy-wise, we have tapped the capacity of energy within the current system and the way things work. To fulfill that next evolution, there needs to be a revolution in energy. And I'm not talking about figuring out how to do more with what we have. We need something new. We need a new form that will create energy, the low-level energy ubiquitous on the planet, but will also propel that next one. Do you see the energy being the fundamental starting point of that expansion of humans in space and solutions also on Earth?
I do, and I'm glad you mentioned both. By the way, I want to share this with you because this sort of connects the dot. So my family office is called IBX, and IBX stands for Imagine, Believe, Execute. So imagine a certain future, believe in it, which is the magic ingredient, and get off your butt and go do it. And that's been really the story of the companies that I have founded and co-founded. Okay, so just sort of putting that for a moment aside, thinking about the energy that you asked about, it connects the space actually to energy. And what I mean by that is, think about this. If you want to go to our closest star, Proxima Centauri, which is 4.25 light years away, and let's say if I used nuclear fission first as a way to get there, it would take over 2,000 years for me with the nuclear fission to go from Earth to Proxima Centauri. Now, let's say we use nuclear fusion, which is the next iteration. And by the way, people don't realize, but the material for nuclear, which is like uranium and thorium, they're not inherently belongs to Earth. They come as a result of a star explosion. So there is this marriage between space and energy. That's why they have so much incredible energy density. Okay, but let's go with fusion. It would take maybe over 100 years to go 4.25 light years. So there's this direct relationship between energy and how fast we can go to other places. But let me just go even crazy and say we're able to create artificial wormholes where we can sort of break time and space and go through these doorways maybe to other places. Because another belief I have is that I think linear ways of traveling to other places in the universe, it's just not meaningful or reasonable to me, as vast as the universe is. So we got to find non-linear ways. And, in fact, I created a Interstellar Initiative fund, funded many studies to see what's the non-linear way to be able to make those things happen. But the energy is the fundamental piece of this. So let's just look at it on our planet. As our population grows, the energy need increases. We can continue to do the same thing with fossil fuel, and we've done. Even if we do it, we're going to run out. So nuclear, I think, is just an incredible solution that is available, ready to go. And I think for a long time, the problem was this perception of nuclear, like you indicated in 70s. So what I've come up with this solution that is 100% safe. So if a plane crashes to it, if a tsunami comes, and not by some electronic intervention, but by physics itself. And then to be able to utilize that, maybe ultimately go to fusion, that solves our planet problem. Going back to IBX, there are 2 sentences that describes what IBX is all about. The first one is protect our home, our planet. The second one is finding new home in stars. Okay, so protecting our home, our planet is really more of X energy story, and finding new home stars is the other space companies plus a nonprofit. But the answer to your question is absolutely, it has a direct relationship to our standard of living and how we live and our survival as a species and ability to be able to travel to other places in the universe.
Do you believe there will be a point where low level energy will be ubiquitous? It won't be an issue, just like information. There was a time where scarcity of information created fortunes and it was really complicated. Whoever controlled information could direct it. I mean, it still exists today, but access to information now, it's not an issue anymore. Energy, there's so much of it depends on energy right now, but even low level energy, whether it's desalination for salt water, ocean water, or powering your phone. But there is a world, I believe, not too far from here, where that level of energy will be ubiquitous. It will be everywhere around us and will just create a new foundation for so much to come out of.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I'll tell you, when I founded Limitless Space Institute, I hired this guy who was the top scientist at NASA. His name is Dr. Sonny White. And as a result of LSI, we created this company out of LSI called Casimir. And we're experimenting with actually drawing power from the quantum field. And we're experimenting at a micro level. And so this is drawing power from the air. And so just imagine crazy world of, you have a battery in your car that draws power from the air and you never have to replace it with anything. You're right. I think as time goes on, nuclear, I think, is the solution now. I believe different form of nuclear, but ultimately we're going to find new source of unlimited power that we can get. By the way, the tagline for Limitless Space Institute is the definition of limitless. We're talking about limitless power is infinite possibilities for those who believe. So I do believe that future is there.
As a species, that's the power that we have. If we compare ourselves to the natural world, the natural world exists at the mercy of nature. They have to migrate. What is a migration? Well, a migration is an expenditure of energy to make sure that you survive between your food source and giving birth. Do they think about, does it make sense to travel halfway around the world just to go and eat? No, they just have to do it and then that's it. We humans have agency. We have the burden and the benefit of awareness, and where we can look at the consequences and we can ask ourselves the big questions, and then we can assess if we want to move in that direction or the other direction. And that is something absolutely unique. And I think that we forget that often when we predict the future. We created a very negative narrative about our species. We think that we're a cancer on the planet, which is not really inspiring for people to keep listening. When you work with children, if you keep telling them that they're awful, well, they will become the exact embodiment, the thing you don't want them to be. And this is what we've been doing collectively with the story of the humans. We keep saying that we're bad, we mess things up. When in reality, we're great at figuring things out. We rise in the worst of times. We need the incentive, but once we have the incentive, we come together and we find solution. Life is messy by design, unfortunately. It's built on tension, disruptions. It wants conflict because that's how evolution happens. But the power of us is to find these solutions and to figure things out. So that's, for me, it's been my mission, whether when I did solo wilderness expeditions and creating those stories, and what now with Future Space, is really to reshape that story so that we embrace moving forward. Right now, we have such an allergic reaction about the future, thinking that we have to go back to the past, when in reality, the past is to find insight, but that's not a place to go back to. We have to figure out how to move forward, how to go, ahead of us is always part of the solution.
And Daniel, I totally agree with you. And I have come up for a word for it: transcend. We need to transcend our past, transcend our now, and, transcend to the future and rise above all the other stuff to be able to get there. And, and that's why I love children. when you talk to them, you see the limitlessness in them. They haven't been infected with all the things that we infuse them with, where create a sense of limitedness rather than limitlessness in them. But I think you're exactly right. And that's why I think inspiring is important, to inspire the next generation to rise above and look at a world that they can create that is so much better than what we have today.
I always look into the past as a place of inspiration, how to negotiate the current and the future. And we look at space and the future and the scale of our problems right now, and we say, oh my God, this is the first time where we've been here. This is impossible. We're on the brink of destroying everything. No, we've been there so many times, and the form of it is the same. It's just the scale is different. But if you go back into Europe or any places around the world thousands of years ago or 500 years, you're on a horseback and, you have to travel for 3 days just to go and mail your letter to somewhere. Today's world would seem absolutely unthinkable. There's a future ahead of us that is exactly as alien or as different because we can't comprehend it. But we figure it out and we did it, right? We build that future. And that's, for me, this is always where I want people to go back to. Again, to that place of agency. This is what we do. We find solution. We figure things out. You were talking about creating wormholes or creating shortcuts. This is what we did in mountains, right? We looked at the mountain and we're like, it doesn't make sense to go on top of the mountain, then go back down the mountain. We can figure out how to dig through the mountain. And now we build tunnels that are just absolutely insane, right? We take it for granted, but back 500 years, this was witchcraft. There's the same picture ahead of us. So I'm excited to see what all your companies are going to be doing, because already so far with Intuitive Machine and Axiom and all the others, it's amazing what can be achieved.
You're exactly right. And to have that openness to say that there is infinite possibilities. I think there's this saying that the day before an invention, it's a crazy idea, So there are so many things in our future. And then when you add this AI and quantum computing and robotics to it, these are, I think, all accelerators. But that's technology, right? Technology developments and everything else. But to me, another piece of this that people don't talk about is inner exploration. And this is what I call my consciousness expansion. The inner exploration, and for us to grow as human beings, to develop a new awareness, a new thinking, a new consciousness, where we're all connected in a different ways. And it's really interesting to me. 35 years ago, if I traveled through Europe, I go from one country to another, and then you go sort of driving from France to Luxembourg, and each place, passport control and, everything else. And all these countries fought each other. Germany with France, France with Germany, and, all the other stuff that happened. And now you go today, there are 27 countries, I think, in EU. So you enter this new community, and all these people for years, hundreds of years, where they killed each other, now there is one unity. So this was a consciousness expansion on their part. Is like, this is sort of stupid, we kill each other. Let's just sort of unify and figure out how we can work things together better. And I think more of that, at least this is my dream, that our consciousness continue to grow, where we get to a point where we realize we really are all one race, the human race.
That's the value of travel. It brings you perspective. Traveling, the culture of travel in Europe is so different than the travel in the US. Having been in Europe so many times, when they finish their schools, the value of a gap year where you go and travel, I've seen in companies where in Europe, they will question the student why they haven't gone on a gap year, because they understand the value of discovering the world and being exposed to different things. In the US, if someone takes a gap year to go and travel the world, company will go and say, why did you not go straight to work after school? Because they don't see the value. Dr. Ghaffarian, with so much wealth of ideas and accomplishment, what would be Dr. Ghaffarian's 3 words of wisdom?
Okay, so One of them is the one I mentioned to you earlier, Transcend. We can go through what that means. I think we discussed that. Another one is, I believe, humility. That's such a powerful world. I mean, if you look at our world today, so many things is based on lack of humility and arrogance. I think there's a proverb in the Bible that says, pride and haughtiness goes before destruction. The opposite of that is humility goes before success. And what I mean by humility is going in a room and say, I'm not the smartest person, and I'm willing to learn. In fact, learning and expansion, consciousness expansion, come as a result of humility. If you believe that you already know everything, there's nothing to learn and there's nothing to expand about. But when you sort of accept the concept of the humility, then you say, okay, I'm willing to expand. And I've been sort of in this spiritual journey, I would say for the last 40 years, that more of an inner exploration at the same time, the technological aspects. I meditate every day, for example, and I have found it to, help me to not only reflect, develop different perspective, but also download ideas during this time. So transcends and humility. And the third word, and again, these are more philosophical and spiritual, to me is the word grace. To have grace with others, to have grace with our children, to have grace with our coworkers, to be graceful with people around us, but not only that, with things around us, with animals around us, with trees around us, with life. Because the other parts of the life have grace toward us. And so if we have this sort of grace toward our planet, therefore we take care of it, we protect our home. And then, we also have to develop the same thing toward ways where we can travel to other places and not, as we go, for example, to the moon and Mars, how do we have a different perspective and be more graceful toward that and not pollute it per way? And be sort of one with it, if you will.
I wrote this story about using the metaphor of our lungs to express a lot of these dynamics in life, about how the lungs by themselves can't do anything. They really at the mercy of the diaphragms, all these muscles. They're just one part of the system. But also they exemplify this notion of reciprocity. They have to take from the world. You breathe in, but as much as you would want to be greedy, you can't. You have to give back. What is given back is used by the others to create what you need. So this fundamental of reciprocity. And then one of the big thoughts into that is it's one of the only things in our senses that has to believe in the invisible, right? It's not like taste where you can see, and we've developed these mechanisms to filter what comes in. Breathing really demands that you trust around you. So the grace and the humility and our relationship with the world, with the planet, and this is for me something that I've always been extremely vocal about it. We need to take care of the planet and ourselves, not from a place of righteousness, but from a place of humility, understanding that it is about us and not about the planet. The planet will figure it out even if we...
Exactly. Planet will continue to live even though we're not here.
It is for us. It's for us to choose a world in where we can experience the richness of it and we understand the connectedness of it. So coming from a place of humility instead of righteousness transforms everything, the angle of approach, and it becomes less about pointing fingers and dividing the world rather than uniting. Because if you start going to the table and start telling people that they've done mistakes, well, that's communication 101. Everybody puts themselves on the defense and now they start pushing back, even if they agree with you. They just don't want to be told that they've done the bad thing, because ultimately we're all trying just to put food on the table and send our kids to school. And so the world is a little bit more complicated. Dr. Ghaffarian, it's been an honor to have you on podcast Future Space. Maybe we can have you in the Galapagos if your schedule permits.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, and I very much enjoyed it. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, and take good care of your mom. I know that you're a family man, so
Thank you.
thank you very much. Have a good day.
Take care. Bye-bye.